Hi, it's Andy again, and today's video is going to be about the fullness of the Gentiles. My Monday video was about the faith of the Gentiles, and the faith of really Romans is about the Gentiles and the Jews, but Paul is going off to a foreign land. He's going to a place he's never been. We've already established that. And a part of that is he's going to a people that need the gospel, but there's a church here that really doesn't have a leader of sorts, and so he's going to instill that leadership both for the Jew and for the Gentile, but in a very real sense, this is because of the Gentiles. So, what's interesting is that as Paul goes, he does so to fulfill ultimately what God is having him do. When God called Paul in Acts chapter 9, he said that he was going to send him off to a different people, meaning the Gentiles. In Romans chapter 11, which we'll get to in many more months, Paul writes that the people of Israel there's a restriction on them, so to speak, that they are not able to see the truth of who God really is and what God has really done for them until, and here's the words, the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. Meaning that Israel is a tree, but the Gentiles will be grafted into that tree of salvation, so to speak. And God is doing that. So God is not being fully revealed to the Jews until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. So Paul's calling to really make the fullness of the Gentiles happen began in Jerusalem, around that area, and moved to the west, but it has not gone far enough. There is still more to the west, more to the north that he needs to do. But Rome, while Rome was the hub, everything that Paul had done to that point was east of Rome, and really between Rome and Jerusalem, and up into parts of Asia a little bit, etc. So interestingly, the geography of the day is that Paul wanted to go. Romans 15:19 says that Paul wants to go to Spain. That's his ultimate goal, is to get to Spain, which would have been the furthest most part of the known world. In fact, in Romans chapter 1, 14, 15, when it talks about the barbarians, many people think that that's who Paul might have been referring to, was the people of Spain. And so with that understanding, Paul has to have a new place, a new hub to get there. His hub had been Antioch, which was much further east. And from Antioch, he had been able to go to Jerusalem. He had been able to go to Crete and to Athens and to Thessalonica and to Ephesus in Asia and other places. All of those things had happened. But now he is moving further and further west. And so if you look at it from a map perspective, you could kind of draw the line of the known world from Jerusalem to Illyricum and then to Rome. And Illyricum being approximately halfway between, not exactly, but halfway between Jerusalem and Rome, and now Rome representing a new launching point so that he could move on to Spain from there. Illyricum itself is what would be modern day Yugoslavia, Albania, type of thing, but it was a key stopping point approximately halfway on the way to Rome. Now, we might think, wow, how long would that take? Well, one thing about how long something takes is many people ask that question, but most people that ask the question of how long it will take are not setting themselves up for long-term success. John Maxwell says when he was young, he learned this lesson about a task that he had to do, and he said, boy, I wonder how long this is going to take. And once he realized that it wasn't how long that it took that mattered, it was how far he could go that mattered, it changed his mindset. And that's something that I've been working on in these past few years as well. Not how long does it take to get this done, but wow, how far can I really go with this? How far can I take this? And that was Paul's mindset. Again, he hadn't been to Rome. He wanted to go to Rome. How long will it take to get to Rome? He didn't care because Rome wasn't his ultimate destination. It's how far can I go once I get to Rome? So that's a little bit of what Paul is thinking. And Paul would do this in spite of the challenges. And obviously, when he gets back to Jerusalem, he's arrested. and he's taken captive, and he makes it to Rome that way. But it reminds me of an email that I received last week from a friend of mine who was talking about the sons of Sceva in Acts chapter 19. And these sons were sons of the high priest, and they were going to cast a demon out from this man. And the demon looks right at these 7 sons and says, Jesus I know, and Paul I've heard of, but I don't know you. And so at that point, this man who was possessed by this evil spirit overpowered them, is what the text says in Acts chapter 19, about verse 15 or so. And the statement that my friend wrote in the email is something that he wrote in his Bible. And it says this: do I live my life in such a way that the demons talk about me when they talk to each other? Wow. They obviously talked about Paul. They obviously knew Jesus. But do the demons talk about me? Do I live my life in such a way that the demons talk about me when they talk to each other? You know, that might scare some of us to some degree. But like Paul knew, and like John wrote in his letter, 1 John, in chapter 4, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. And that's the hope that we can take. So let us not just think about how long something takes, but how far we can go. Let us think about the task that there are still Gentiles in our world today that still have not heard. There are tribes and nations around the world that have still not heard the message. And until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in, Jesus will not return, according to Matthew 24. So it's up to you and I to make this happen. We can do so if we just will have the faith to live our lives the way God would have us to live them.